Hey folks, greetings from the Offensive Security Group here at Secure IT 360, coming at you with another episode of the Cyber Threat Perspective. Today we have another illustrious guest on the podcast, Mark Brophy, who's on the DFIR and Digital Forensics Incident Response team here at Secure IT 360. I will let him introduce himself and give a little background of his experience and skill set and what he specializes in. But today we're going to be talking about transforming your security, insights from coaching a collegiate cyber defense team. So this is a blog post that Mark wrote that was published on the securit360.com blog about a month ago, or a little over a month ago or so. And we were talking in the pre-show that this really resonated with me, and I think it would resonate a lot with the people who listen to this podcast. So we're going to go into depth in this blog post. I'm going to share it on the screen for people who are listening. If you go over YouTube, I'm just going to share it on the screen and we're going to walk through it. There's a lot of really good insights in this that Mark has put into this. He's been an information security professional for a long time. He's got a lot of experience in a lot of different industries, and I'll let him share more about that. But we're going to go into some lessons learned, some tried and true techniques, tactics, if you will, for defending your organization, for defending your firm, and things that hopefully you can take away and implement in your environments to ward off the attackers, to defend against attacks, to make your environment harder for attackers to operate in, and everything in between. So without further ado, Mark, welcome again to the podcast. Thanks for coming on. And
thanks for having me.
Yeah, appreciate it.
Yeah, so my background, I've been in IT since over 20 years now. Usually when I introduce myself to students, I tell them that the Network Plus exam I took was version 1 and wireless wasn't the topic yet. That's how long I've been. It hasn't been, wireless was even created. So I've been doing network infrastructure, came up through engineering ranks. And of course, early days of security, engineering, security was kind of a piece of that. If you manage the antivirus, you manage the firewalls, you were the security guy. But over the course of my career, I've been able to specialize and focus more in. My passion has been more on the defensive side of the house than the offensive side that, like you and Brad and the team here have. My role here at Security 360 is I run our response team. So we're the first responders, the firefighters that come in when a breach has happened, and we come in and help you get yourself squared away and get the bad guys out of your environment. The background on this post, this blog, about 5 years ago, I started doing some adjunct teaching at some local colleges, more of my giving back. Early in my career, I had some mentors who were really, really good, and they were doing the same. So that it really instilled in me. And I think that's one of the things I've always liked about IT and security is there's always senior people willing to put forth content and knowledge. There's no gatekeeping. If you really want to learn a lot, this podcast is a great example. You can listen to and gain a lot of information and get a lot of experience, but actually have your hands on the keyboard.
Yep.
So I was teaching a cybersecurity program, and one of the things that this school that I was teaching at was a part of is there's a national collegiate cyber competition where colleges put together a team, usually of 5 to 7 individuals. And for about 68 hours, they're put through the gauntlet. They're given a network to defend, and the red team comes at them, and they're given real-world challenges. This is hands-on keyboard, real-world. Injects are coming in, emails from bosses telling you, why are my systems not up? So it's a really great distillation for any kind of experience for people in security. And over the course of several years, as we've had our ups and downs with this, in the competition, there are some key moments that were like aha moments. As me as a security professional by day saw things that was kind of neat. I could see them in this incubator. I can see them going about, and then actually try to implement it with some of my other coaches and say, hey, what do you think about this? And my other coaches are all highly decorated, highly specialized security individuals, and they're like, yeah, let's go for this. And what we found out was some of our insights, really paid off. And then some of it didn't. It wasn't, the fallback wasn't like, well, quick, let's go out and buy the next product. What's AI say, or what's this say? Like it really was, some other concepts. So since these were so simple, I thought, well, this is something literally anybody can use. anybody can, whether you have a network of 25 computers or 25,000. My goal
Yep.
here was to kind of give out some general concepts of stuff that I came across over those many years, and
Yep.
say, hey, look, here's what we saw in the trenches in the real
Yep.
heat of the battle, and here's what our results were. So
Yeah, there's two things I really like about this. One is the apprenticeship approach of the collegiate cyber defense stuff, right? And the other is this idea of teaching or educating on concepts or techniques as opposed to tools, right? So
yep.
with the apprenticeship thing, I think one of the best ways to learn is through an apprenticeship approach, right? It's one thing to learn from a textbook or go through a course or even press buttons in a lab, right? It's another thing to actually do the work and to have, repercussions as a result of the work that you do, right? Because a lot of the work we do has meaningful consequences, right? If we do a pen test and we do an Nmap scan and we do like a T5 and we knock over a network device, that has real implications to the client. Whereas in a lab, you don't get those same things. And same thing with the collegiate cyber defense leagues and things like that. There are there's real feedback back and forth, and it's a great way to learn. And I think the apprenticeship approach of learning is a great way to foster new talent, to get people interested into the industry, and to teach them the skills that they need to be successful. So that's one thing that I really like about this, and I'm sure you've probably seen that as well, just through your coaching, right? Is people learning through actually doing the work.
Yeah, we often joke amongst us faculty is we have our students in class, and a lot of times kids come through the cohort and kind of running through the whole program together. The same course students start at the same time, and you see this maturization process. And it isn't until someone actually get on the cyber team and actually start applying this regularly, because they may get some conceptual ideas or a small lab in a classroom, but it isn't until it's really like them all of a sudden the rise in skill is meteoric. And I mentioned in the blog article that the school I taught at, we had 100% successful rate in placing students into the field, and part of that was just what you described. They were able to demonstrate their skills, and a lot of times some of these other competitions, this particular competition is closed to the public, but there's other competitions that the team would compete in that are open to the public, and there would be companies like Microsoft, Sophos, Fortinet watching people compete, and they would. I mean, I know of people walking out of that competition with offers in hand because they actually were on display.
Sure.
Almost like the combine. Like, okay,
it's like scouting for sports, right?
Exactly.
Like, look at this super awesome defender, super awesome hacker, or whatever the case may be, whatever team you're on.
Yeah.
Awesome. So let's dig into it. I think there's a handful of kind of lessons that you have in here that are really great that I want to go through and kind of pick your brain on and hear your thoughts on. So the first one I think is great. I think it sets up the whole article itself really well. And it's that no plan survives contact with the enemy. So that's an awesome quote. And I obviously really like the second quote too, because I think that has direct implications to cybersecurity. And it's everyone has a plan until they get punched in the mouth by Mike Tyson. And both of those two things I think are, when we think about cybersecurity and risk and vulnerabilities and exploits, those are really good setups for this conversation. So let us know what you think. Like, what does this mean to you, and what was your lesson learned from this?
So the background behind this, I think sometimes those of us defending security, we often get stuck in ruts, right? We go about things like, oh, we're told we need to do this. We need to focus on this. And it's not the information was incorrect. It's just that things change and sometimes things morph, and we're still very reluctant to do so. And sometimes you got to be willing to make that change. So in the scenario I gave, what I observed, so quick setup. In this particular competition, the students about a week before get an idea of the infrastructure and protect it. They get a list of servers, but they don't get any other information. So they'll know if they're defending a Jenkins server or a Windows domain controller or what version of firewall they're running, but that's it. They don't get any hands-on. They just know here's what to expect. And then the day of the competition, when the flag drops, the first 20 minutes, I believe, it's hands off. They're able to log in and look around and get acclimated, but at minute, 1 second after 20 minutes, the red team is on. They're in, and their whole goal is to disrupt services. And each of these systems that the blue teamers are kids. I say kids. We have students of all ages, right? We have some that are older than me and some that are 18, 19 years old. So since I'm the faculty member, I always refer to them all as kids. So, but they're not. We do have a lot of adult students as well. But the kids will get their hands on the box, and then the red team comes in, and their whole goal is to get the service restored. Each service has a little daemon running, and it's kind of like, am I up? And if it's up, you get points for every second, every minute that server is up, that it's talking to the scoring engine. And if it's down, you lose points. So that's how they ultimately track who's a winner, who's a loser. There's a scoreboard.
Yep.
So what we would see is, okay, the flag drops, red team goes in, and boom, services go down. Well, you know that as soon as they would get on these, we would know a few days at a time, oh, geez, they're running an old version of Red Hat, or they're running an old version of CentOS or something like that. And, oh, no, here's the vulnerabilities on this box. And the first thing that everyone was doing was focusing on, okay, getting control of the box and then patching the vulnerabilities to stop the red team. And they end up finding that they were stuck in this loop. They would start working a little bit, and the red team would kick them down. Or sometimes the repositories to download the patches were busted. You couldn't get patches out there. What was if that was your game plan all along? Now what do you do? So we saw students trying to rebuild repositories on a Linux box in the middle of competition, and this whole competition is only like 6 hours long, right? So it's not like days on end. So we just said, this just isn't working. This just isn't working. So we took a step back and said, well, what is the real threat or vulnerability the red team is exploiting? Is there other ways? And then it's like, hey, let's work on detection that this red team is on the box, and work on the eviction, which is part of the containment process. But also, like, are there any kind of controls we can put in place? Are there things like we can shut off certain daemons, or we can disable accounts? And we start focusing on that more holistically than hey, my box is Swiss cheese with patches, and all they're doing is running the log4j against me all day long. And what we found out was that by taking a step back from focusing so much on patching, and again, as I put in the article, patching is still important and good hygiene is still important. If you have good controls, if you have good management, vulnerability management drops in its priority down the stack. So now we were able to, as the red team was coming in, we were able to more quickly evict and keep them out for longer durations, which, again, if you keep them out in the back, there's a scoring engine going, that equated to longer run times, accumulation of more points, and then we saw our overall team performance increasing to each competition. So it was our methodology of, hey, patches are important, but if you're really in the middle of a crisis, maybe throwing that patch on in the middle isn't the right first step to be doing.
Yeah, and there's a lot of corollaries to traditional network defense, right, in an organization. We see time and time again, we do a security assessment or a pen test, and we see organizations focusing on, the 5,000 vulnerabilities that Nessus spits out in its report, right? And if you've heard me speak about this before, you might have heard this before. If you follow me on social media, you'll hear me say this is, 99% of vulnerabilities don't matter. It's the 1% of vulnerabilities that matter. It's the Avanti Connect. It's the 0 day, XYZ. It's
TLS 1.1 should keep you up at night.
Exactly. Right. And we have this discussion all the time, even internally on the pen test team. It's like, how do we display the results of these pen test engagements where there is a vulnerability like Suite 32 or some out of date TLS, like by all intents and purposes, it's a vulnerability, it has risk. But compared to other things that we find or other issues that a firm might have, it's lower on the priority list. And we see a lot of opportunity to educate clients, to educate IT people, security people on what to focus on to better protect their environment, right? Because at the end of the day, you have limited resources, you have limited time, like you just illustrated. You need to be prioritizing in order to effectively defend, right? And you need to be spending those dollars appropriately and efficiently, and going out and trying to patch 5,000 vulnerabilities, medium, highs, whatever, is not going to be the best use of your time compared to other things that you could be doing, right? And to wrap that up, A lot of times I'll do a pen test, right? And I'll go into the organization, and I know they're doing vulnerability management, but I find some fairly immature security vulnerability, like something that is like a maturity type thing where it might be, the local admin password is the same on every workstation, right? It's a fairly low on the maturity scale of getting to the point where you can mitigate that and have unique
Yeah.
passwords with like laps or something. But they're doing really good at vulnerability management. They're scanning Nessus every day and they're looking at the reports and they're focusing on that stuff. But they have all this stuff over here that is arguably way more risky
Yeah.
in their environment, and there's a lack of prioritization, a lack of focus. So I
Yeah.
really like that perspective in that lesson. That
Yeah.
you.
And sadly, I see that too much in my incident response roles. I'll go in and I'll find an organization. They have all the good tools. They were doing patch management. They were doing software deployments. But then they didn't roll back, too many admins in the kitchen, so to speak.
Yep.
The user clicked on a link, they were admin to that workstation, and bingo. Like, so there's, again, talking about maturization. So that first lesson really was a maturization for us as a coaching element, a team element. Was this like, hey, what we're doing isn't working. Is this
Yep.
really the right thing? And I think that's all the dialogue you need to be having. Again, we were fortunate that we had safe combat. We could throw our techniques out there, see if they would work, and then when we get hammered, okay, that didn't work. Obviously, you can't do that in real life. You can't
Yep.
do that in production. But if there's a way that you can have those conversations or engage a team like yourself and say, hey, we want a red team to really push us. Are we doing
Yep.
the right things along the way? The value gleaned out of
Yep.
that is immeasurable. It'll pay for itself.
And fortunately, you had the metrics in place to get that feedback, right? Your
Yeah.
metric was time and the amount of effort that you were putting in, and not getting the flags, the points that you needed to be successful at the competition, right? In real life, those metrics are maybe not as tangible for a real organization, right? Like, how do you know if you're spending too much time with vulnerability management, right?
Yeah.
You might not have that direct feedback other than just the raw time that you spend. So being able to have self-awareness and kind of just some introspection to figure out, like, am I spending too much time on this? Like, are there other things to focus on?
Yeah.
Just having those conversations with yourself or with your team and be like, hey, are we focusing on the right things? And just regularly having those conversations with the team, I think will be helpful to people to kind of implement this lesson in practice.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
And this leads really great to the next point. And I'll let you read this quote because it's really good. And it's something that I'm going to include in like all my presentations now because I just love this quote. I think it lands very well. And it's all about doing the basics. So this is lesson number 2, doing the basics. So if you would read that
Yeah.
quote and then describe a little bit about this one.
So lesson 2 is do the basics and do them well. And then last summer at the SANS DFIR conference, it's free for anyone to attend virtually. Go ahead, create an account, sign up. One of the speakers, and I wish I could give the speaker proper credit, maybe even been the host. He made a comment and he said, ransomware threat actors are very good at the basics, and this shows against companies that aren't. And when he said that, I mean, it was like, man,
It's like,
yeah, like mic drop. That was it. And that is, I share that quote with you, and we talk about
yep,
it all the time. I mean, it's just so good. And unfortunately, I see that as an incident responder. When I deal with people with
yep,
ransomware, it's you found out that you didn't do this one step quite so well, and
yep,
the bad guy did. The story behind this. So, as you can imagine, dealing with people who are new, people who are excited, enthusiastic, when you put a little pressure on them, interesting things happen. And often what we were seeing in the heat of combat during these competitions was people come up with these crazy ideas, really trying, well, what if we do this? What if we do that? And really over-engineer and overthink it. And
mm-hmm.
me from an engineering background, anyone who's been a sysadmin, we all been there. We've all
Oh yeah,
thought of a way to, well, hey, I can get this to work if I just, stack, one more egg on top of this tower of Jenga. This will be
yeah,
fine. Like, and
exactly,
we made it overcomplicated. Whereas keeping it simple really is the best. And the example I used is we had one competition and we had this one student and she was fairly new to computers. I mean, if she in our program, she was maybe in our school for like a year and a half, and came out of the cyber team and, got thrown in the deep end. But she just, during all of our trainings, all our gatherings, she just kept her notes, kept her run book, and just kind of kept to the basics.
Hmm.
So the day of the competition, she gets assigned the Linux bind server. And for that particular competition that weekend, for some reason, the red teamers just picked on that particular service more than others. Now, I don't know whether it was more vulnerable, the version of Linux or the version of bind, but that system seemed to be down more than others. And this was across all the other schools. As we could see the scoreboards from those schools, we could
Yep.
see, the Connect Four. We could see all the
Yep.
reds and blue dots as how it went up and down. And this student, after a short period of time of being down, restored services, and the server stayed up.
Hmm.
And we're, saying, okay, yeah, we're up. And then we're watching everybody else drop. We're staying up.
Yep.
And then we're watching everyone else pop back up. And then they're falling off and we're staying up. So everyone else is popcorning and we're staying consistent. Now, meanwhile, one of the other coaches, he was on our team captain's channel and he can see all the comms for the red team. Is because that's where the white team operates. They follow the same premise as military training. White team is like the referees, the neutral. Red team's offense, blue
Yep.
team is defense. And he could see them saying, "Wow, whoever's running that box is, man, they're just dynamite. They're just, man, this is like kudos, 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 kudos." And then
Yep.
of course competition wraps up, and you say, "Wow, you did a fantastic job. What did you do?" She said, I just had my checklist. I just kept going over it. When I saw something wrong, I went back to the beginning. I just did these same steps over and over again, like
Yep.
tab up, enter, tab, and she got called out for an award or for
Nice.
meritorious work for the work that she had done, because again, the red team that weekend, they had just hammered that particular service.
Yep.
So the takeaway from that is, while flashy is sexy, simple gets it done.
Yep.
I think of the A-10 Warthog. To me, that's the coolest aircraft ever built. It has one job in life. It's not big, it's not flashy, but you ask anybody, what do you want to see coming on the pipeline to come bail you out? You say it in A-10 because it's
Yep.
just simple. It works.
Yeah, and that's it. That comment there that I highlighted is little to no real world IT experience.
Yeah.
Like even with limited understanding, with a run book, a checklist, with things to do, that are documented well, you can do a lot of good things, and you can defend well, and vice versa. So, yeah, I really like this, and this is something that we see all the time with security products. Security products are getting more advanced. They're getting more complex. There's more moving parts and pieces to everything. Virtually everything has gotten more complex. And it seems like the more complexity we get, the more it's even more important to keep it simple, right?
Yeah.
And it just goes to show that you can do a lot of good things with simple things, with keeping it simple, with well documented processes, and by using the tools at your disposal, right? Use the tools you have, use the capabilities you have to as much potential as possible.
Yeah, and that's, my heart goes for the little guy, because I've worked in some smaller environments, smaller shops in the past, and they may not have budgets for top tier, Garter quadrant leading products,
Yep.
but it doesn't mean you can't be as secure. If you do some of the basics and you do them well,
Yep.
that in itself is, is the value that can make it, proving that professional red teamers went against someone significantly less experienced doing the basics, and they had a tough day, right? So got a chance to see it up front.
And yeah, for those listening who are IT admins, CISOs, IT directors, things like that, just keep in mind that ransomware quote, right? That a lot of threat actors, ransomware groups included, are really good at doing the basics. So these aren't, crazy one-off exploits that they're burning or 0 days. They're getting in through phishing. They're using lol bins. They're using, Cobalt Strike and a lot of traditional attack techniques. So I say that to say that there's hope for preventing and mitigating a lot of that, right? They're doing a lot of the tried and true things from their playbooks, and you can defend against it, because it's not super sophisticated things in most cases. Majority of ransomware cases are going to be taking advantage of things that are just low tech or low skill, just kind of running through their own playbook. So they're keeping it simple as well.
Brings up that I've got a video out on our YouTube channel talking about the cyber kill chain. And I walk you through how any organization, especially the small organizations, how to use the cyber kill chain to just map what an adversary does. And the whole purpose behind the cyber kill chain is the bad guy starts at point A and his goal is to get to point B. Think of like The Price is Right, the putting tournament where every time you get a correct answer, you move closer to the hole. Where he's trying to get closer to the hole to get his objective. If any point along the way you stop them from achieving their objective, you won because they're no longer closer. And the final putting the ball in the hole, that's the detonation of ransomware. That's the exfiltration of data. That's their end goal. So as long as you stop and point it away. So if you want to go over to YouTube and check out the video clip, show you how it's very easy to just draw the map as far as what the steps are, line up what they're trying to do, and figure out what do you have at each step to block those steps. But also, what do maybe you might uncover something, because I've seen them for some organizations, they had one tool blocking 3 steps. Well, what happens if that one tool fails? Oops. Now all of a sudden you thought you had protection at 3 layers, you're only protection at 1 and now 0. So so anyways, it's over there on our Security 360 channel over on YouTube.
Yeah, that's great. And that's a great segue to the next one, which is network control is a force multiplier. So another great quote I really like. So walk us through network control, what this meant in the Collegiate Cyber League, and how defenders can kind of think about this when they're in an incident, or maybe even before an incident happens. How we can think about this.
So again, a little bit of the background is, about a week before is when the students get an idea what their network's going to look like, and then like the day before, they're actually allowed to log in to test credentials, make sure that the day when the flag drops that there's no issues with the basics of computing. But the night before the competition, now the red team is made up of, or at least the red team years ago, there's been a change in who's running the previous school that ran this. Great job, phenomenal job. It was really taxing on them because it is. You can imagine the scope and scale of trying to run something like this for many, many years.
Sure.
They decided to pass the baton off to another school, and now so new school is taking things different directions. Not bad or good, just different because there's new change of guard. So back with this other group is running things. The night before, the red teamers were literally industry pros. There were a lot of guys you would see speak at RSA, and they're the ones who are attacking. I mean, these guys did it a lot of time, were volunteering. So you're talking about like elite red teamers. And the night before, they would go in and they would just ransack the network. They would just plant the toolkits everywhere, damage systems, damage stuff, just trample things. And then the students would get in on the next day. They'd get in there, and of course, they're an uphill battle. And one competition, it was just a slaughter. No one could get any of their systems are running. And the other coaches we were pissed. We're like, come on, this is supposed to be a learning experience. It's, we already know that these red teamers are professionals. This is what they do every day. And to kind of, you got students in a learning environment. So, despite being a good motivator, we sat around and said, you know what? The one thing we have here is home field advantage. This is our network, right? Yep. This is ours. And in order for them to execute anything, they got to cross our wires. They got to cross our network. So we looked around and we said, okay, we're going to control the network. We're going to control everything that they do. We're not even going to focus on patching. We're not going to focus on hardening. We're just going to say we're going to control the network.
Yep.
And just so happened the first go around that we went to implement this, one of the sponsors of the tournament was Palo Alto. And in that particular round, Palo Alto firewall was chosen to be used. Now, Palo Alto, every round that they have, they change up the technologies used. Sometimes it's pfSense or it's Cisco ASA or Palo Alto. So everyone gets a sure shake. Well, this time they put Palo Alto front, and we knew it. We had one student who bought into what we were saying and believing, and he took in Palo Alto. I mean, hard. I mean, he just went in on it on his days off, just put in the man hours. So when the first 20 minutes hits and he gets onto the box, first thing he gets in a console and he's kicking out all the back doors and things that the red teamer put on the firewall, lawyer all the rules, rebuilt everything from scratch. And within 45 minutes, the firewall is back and running. And from that point forward, the red team is out. Yep. Now, never in the history of this competition had the red team been kicked out of an environment and never got back in. We did that. So it's like, okay, we're onto something here.
Yep. And
that was rewarding. I'm not going to deny it because we had previously watched our students get pummeled, and getting some revenge there was sweet. But then the next go around, of course, we're changing up the products, and they moved Palo Alto away from us, and we had to go back to another generation of firewalls, which was not nearly as
Yep.
capable. So we said, okay, how do we still maintain the same philosophy if you don't have a toolkit like Palo Alto? Palo
Yep.
Alto is a phenomenal piece of technology if you can afford it. And I say that even the entry level stuff is still really good. It's now way more affordable. They've got newer products on there, but maybe it's still beyond your personal skill set, because Palo Alto is very complex to properly deploy it. So we just said, okay, we're going to presume that the whoever firewall was that round, I don't remember which one it was. It may have been pfSense. So we're just going to presume that box is compromised, and we're just going to presume there's an any rule. Like they can just come on in. So then we
Mhm.
focus ourselves onto the hosts. And when we were teaching the students were, you know what, if you don't know what that connection is coming to your box, kill it. And that's what they did. But first
Mhm.
by hand, and over a period of time, they were learning how to script and automate, how to put in changes to the firewalls and the local hosts. In this instance, this was about 6 months before the big marketing came out of zero trust. In this sense, that's what we were doing. We were implementing zero trust
Yep.
before it actually got a name pinned to it. And I'm not saying we created it, not in the least. Just saying
Yep.
we decided if our battlefield is no longer at the perimeter, it's now at our host. We're going to take the battle to our host. We're going to protect our host, and that's what we did. And it
Yep.
worked. It worked, and we've implemented it ever since. And every year, unofficially, in the rankings, our school is always deemed to do high or perform well because that's what we tend to focus on. When red
Yep.
teamers come in, they have a tough time getting their stuff well established because we're constantly killing communications, or service daemons and stuff can't work. And like, if we don't know who you are, we're killing your traffic. And that's what I guess, like, for a corporation, it shouldn't be easy for a threat actor to just walk across your network, because that's your home field. If you were like me, I knew what every device was plugged in that switch port.
Yep.
Like, I knew it. So now I need to make it so if I don't know what the traffic is, I got to deny it, or at least heavily alert on it. Let me come look, investigate, why is this device talking to that device? And
Yep.
that's what we ended up deploying, and it's been quite successful since. And I actually took that experience and took it a step further, incorporated in one of the organizations I worked for, an engagement you were working with us. I took that and all the way to the endpoints and manage their firewalls to the point where when we were doing engagements, you don't even recall, you came in on an engagement, we were doing a co-assessment.
Mhm.
You ran a scan and said, okay, all I found on this network was some printers. Our firewalls were so hardened that about a dozen devices of workstations were totally skipped over, because that's how well they were hardened. So we,
Yep.
we controlled at that point. So the host does matter. If you can manage it at that host level, then it doesn't matter if you've got the right connections and you're managing that well, then it shouldn't matter what's on your perimeter, because at that point, even if there's like the Palo Alto vulnerability that came out a couple weeks ago and people gaining access, your hosts are so well hardened for network traffic.
Yep.
Okay, the bad guy got into the house, but he still can't do anything.
Yep. Yeah, and that speaks to something that I believe I've heard John Strand say, and I apologize if I'm misquoting, but it was essentially that, think about defending your network as making it as hostile as possible to an
Yeah.
adversary, to a threat
Yep.
actor. You want your network to be so difficult to operate in for a threat actor that they give up and they move on to somebody else. Because,
Yep.
and you can speak to this too, Mark, a lot of threat actors are financially motivated, right? And
Yep.
they're a business in of themselves, just like we are. And they're not going to spend hours and hours and hours and hours troubleshooting if it's not worth it, right?
Right.
They'll just move on to a softer target. And if you can make your environment hostile to adversaries, while still making it manageable for your end users and people to use to do their job, that's a win. And that's going to be a successful way to defend your organization.
Yeah, and I'm not going to affirm deny the existence of canaries or honeyports or any of those technologies that were used in the cyber competitions. But like you said, if you make it hostile, especially in a limited window, we only had 6 hours. If we had a red teamer that he's spending more time focusing on trying to get reestablished or to navigate, he's spending more
Yep.
time doing that. That means there's less times if we evict him of him coming back, or it means there's less time at him to pivot off onto another machine. So okay, you're attacking one system, but we kept 5 up. Okay, that's still a
Yep.
good score. Like, so it's, you
Yeah.
want to, more importantly, my view of things from incident responses, you want to make it as hostile because you want to make it noisy. Right?
Mm.
The more they move around, the more chances syslogs are going to fire off, alerts going to fire, something's going to trip that something is wrong. And that's usually
Yep.
what happens. Like you read with United Health, dwell time there was like 9 days between
Mm.
initial access into the environment and the full
Yep.
ransomware. 9 days. During 9 days, at no point was there disclosed or that somebody saw something or there's an alert or something.
Yep.
You want to make a show like there's a
Yep.
hallway full of broken glass and cats with long tails and empty
Yep.
empty bottles. The moment you touch it, everything goes off and lights come on, and
Yep.
then you come investigate.
Yeah, and I did a podcast with Brad a couple weeks ago that was essentially on the topic of layered security, and that's essentially why you want layered security is to make the threat actors perform more steps, to do more actions, so that they make more noise, so there's more opportunities to detect
Yeah,
them and evict them from the network. Right?
yeah, and
That's the goal.
it's that short Weinhall time-based security. If you can't afford a strong security posture, you can't afford a tremendous amount of technology. Invest in detection, because your exposure window is equal to your detection time plus your
Mhm.
response time, right? Think of it
Yep.
like a traditional bank robbery. If a bank robber goes in and he knows the teller pushes the button and it's immediate and the cops take 5 minutes to get there, he knows he's got 4 minutes and 59 seconds to get out
Yep.
before he's captured. But that's why you always see in the movies them trying to silence the alarm or to cut it off. They're trying to get their detection time wider so they have more time to operate. No
Yep.
different than network security, that if you can invest in detection, even if you don't have the means to fully defend, at least you can respond and shut something down, or you can
Yep.
stop services. You can respond quicker than the exposure window they need to start actually doing their payloads.
Yep. Yeah. So the next one is really good too, and I think was there one more? Yeah, there's one more, and then we'll wrap up because we're coming up on time here. So lesson number 4: know the rules. All the steps of the process matter. And I again love this quote: "If you can't describe what you're doing as a process, you don't know what you're doing." By Edward Deming. Really good, and I love the emphasis on process here. Process, documentation, workflow, checklists, things like
Yeah.
that. Following the process and knowing the rules is really interesting. So I'd love to hear your feedback on this section.
So this one was a little more. This was a little more diligence on the coach's part, and the fact that there was a different competition the team was competing for. And when they were going through how this one was going to be scored, they happened to notice there was a big section that there was going to be an interview phase where coaches or judges were going to be interviewing the teams. And one of the topics that was fair game was the change management process,
Mm.
and just as change management. So we said, okay, here's the opportunity here to have some points. And we use the term easy points and the fact that these are points the team can earn without being on the keyboard.
Right.
Easy versus, I'm not trying to say easy, like change management is an easy concept. So we actually took the time, had training sessions, lectures, PowerPoints, talked about it, did sample change controls, talked about all of it now, forwards and backwards. Get to the competition, and the day of the competition, the team's having a mediocre day, off day, and they're way back in the pack as far as the score, and things aren't looking well. Well, while one team is in the trenches battling the red teamers, the other teams are off being interviewed. And it was our teams that were being interviewed, and they nailed the answers on the change control. They nailed it, knew it forwards
Mhm.
and backwards. And when all said and done, after the first day, based on their knowing change management, and other teams just taking it for granted, not maybe that's an analogy for life,
Yeah.
really not paying attention to change management. Our team got catapulted into the top 4, and then that led them to the next day where they competed and lost out on first place by like 1/100th of a second. It was
Mm.
something like, but every member of the team goes back and says, "Man, if we didn't do change management, we would never been here." I mean, they all went back and saying, "Know the details, know all the rules, and know what you need to do."
Yeah. Yeah. It's super good, and it just speaks to it just speaks to the process, right? And focusing, like you said, focusing on active defense and an overall strong security performance, just focusing on things that matter.
Yeah.
Number 5 is good too. I don't plan to spend a ton of time on this one. But Defender is good. So I agree. I think Defender, built-in Defender is good. And I think it gets a lot of flack, and you see a lot of red teamers and offensive security people touting that their malware bypasses Defender and whatnot. But I do agree. It is good for what it is. It's built in. And I oftentimes just recommend, to my family and friends, like, just use Defender. Like, if you have a use case for something more specific, that's fine. But I'm a big fan of built-in Defender. I think it does well for what it is.
Yeah, and my story to really hear is one of more recent competitions. When our team got on the box and the Windows servers, they immediately found that the Defender had been disabled and just trashed. I mean, non-operable for the entire competition. And then the end of the competition, when the red team captain is doing his after action and he's talking about things, someone asked that question, and he pretty much said, quote unquote, "Yeah, we intentionally did that because if Defender was allowed to run, most of our toolkits wouldn't run."
Yep.
So here is, regardless if you're a Microsoft lover or hater, here is a team of professional red teamers saying that if that Microsoft tool that built into Windows was running, it would stop most of our exploits, most of our kits that we're trying to do to accomplish our techniques. I can't get a more ringing endorsement than that. And again, you don't have to love it or hate it. Just know that it's there, it's quality product. And, there's more details in the blog article. I go into more details as far as my history with the product as well. So it's a good read. But yeah, it's, Microsoft gets a lot of flack, good, bad, and otherwise, because they are who they are. But when professionals say, in order for me to do my job, I need to damage that product, damage those defenses to get the job done. Well,
Yep.
So
as we wrap up here, Mark, what's your advice for organizations? If you had to sum up this blog post and provide like a little nugget of wisdom to people who are defending organizations, who are an IT admin or an IT director, a CISO, what would be kind of your advice for cyber defense, network security, that you could maybe take away from this blog post that they could apply in their environment? Like,
it's very easy. It's very easy to get caught up in the brouhaha or the FUD over security. And most times, just focusing on the core basics, focusing on what is your true goals, asking the tough questions, am I doing this right? Those are things you can do in everyday life outside of security, and then you apply them here. It doesn't matter if you're a small company with limited budget or Fortune 100. These are all things that you're going to be able to implement to truly move the needle in security. And that was my goal here, saying, look, security does not have to be mysterious. It does not have to be, tiered like, genuflect when you mention the word security. It's some of this is just basic stuff. Go ahead and do it. It's okay. And if you do these things, I guarantee you're going to see a positive benefit to your security posture.
Yeah, definitely. So that's our episode. Good. I appreciate the insights, Mark. This was really good. Like I said, I really like this blog post. Hopefully those who are listening go and check this out. You can find this blog post that Mark wrote on the secureIT360.com blog. It's right there. It's called Transforming Your Security Insights from Coaching a Collegiate Cyber Defense Team. I appreciate you, Mark, coming on the show.
Same here. Appreciate it.
So that's our episode. You can find us on secureIT360.com. We have a whole bunch of content on YouTube, on LinkedIn, everywhere else. We have a bunch of content and white papers and blog posts on offsec.blog. And be sure to follow us on LinkedIn if that's something that interests you. We post a lot of content. I post a lot of stuff as well. So follow us there, and we will see you next Wednesday. Thank you.